Hola, hola, it's me, Ms. Cacmo here with a little recap slash if you were absent note video about reflexive pronouns, and I'm going to try to keep it short and sweet. But for those folks who weren't here last class, and even for those folks who were and just need a little refresher, we discussed reflexive pronouns and verbs. So to start off, we thought about the word reflexive and what it means, and we know that a verb is reflexive when it ends in say or letters se. We know that when a verb is reflexive, we also have to use an additional set of pronouns with that verb, or with those verbs, which are may, te, say, nos, os, and say. And that gets placed directly in front of the conjugated verb. So one thing that I mentioned last class, and I'll mention again, is that I went through my entire high school career not knowing or never being taught that there was more than just one category of reflexives. I was only ever taught that reflexives were those routine words where the action is reflected back onto the person who's doing it. But really there are more situations and categories of reflexive verbs, and that just happens to be one of them. So last class we did this note page and we talked about those 4 categories, okay? So category 1 is, again, that category which has a lot of those routine words. I brush my teeth. I bathe myself. I brush my hair. I shave myself. I put makeup on myself. And in that situation, when you have a verb that's reflexive and it's falling into category A, the one that I used last class was the verb sentarse, which means to sit oneself down. That's not really necessarily a routine verb, but it is a situation where the subject is acting upon itself. I am sitting myself down. No one else is sitting me down. I am sitting myself down. Same with the verb levantarse, I'm getting myself up. So essentially in these routine, in the routine category, or in this category A, the say is meaning oneself. Okay? And again, when we conjugate a verb, regardless of what category it falls in, we have to just simply take off this say and associate it with the correct pronoun, reflexive pronoun, before we conjugate a verb. So for example, if I wanted to say I sit down or I sit myself down, I could start with yo, which is not required, but that's our subject pronoun. But I cannot skip past the correct reflexive pronoun. And since we're working in the yo form, all that is a little extra step of putting the right pronoun for the reflexive verb, which in this case is may. You have to have that in there. You can't skip over that part. But the nice thing is, once you do that, you can imagine that now this say is gone, because essentially it is in your conjugation, and now you're just left over with your verb sentar. And it happens to be an E to IE stem changer. So if you were to say, I sit myself down, you would say, yo me siento. I sit myself down, okay? Or I sit myself. I seat myself down. Okay, so that is category A. Again, it's a lot of the routine verbs. It's any situation where the action that you're doing is coming back onto yourself. You're not doing it for someone else or to someone else. The action is reflected back onto the person doing it. Category B is a little bit different, and we use reflexives to express reciprocal actions, and reciprocal actions are pretty much actions that are being done to one another at the same time. So the example they give us here is, yes, we see each other and we talk to each other. All right, we see each other every day at school. That's a reciprocal thing. Both of you are doing the same thing of seeing. We talk to each other every day at school. Both of you are doing the same action of talking to each other. So it's in this situation where we have that idea of like each other or one another. Okay. Category C is a little bit trickier because it's situations where the verb can either be non-reflexive or reflexive. And the difficult part about this is that when the verb is non-reflexive versus when it is, can change the actual meaning of that verb completely. So if we look here, for example, despedir, which means to fire or to dismiss, but when that verb is used reflexively, despedirse, it means to say goodbye. Or for example, ir to go, right? Or irse changes the meaning from to go to leave. So these are some situations when that happens. And just a friendly reminder, not every single verb can be made reflexive. There are a few, this is not all of them, right? There are more that can be made reflexive as well. But these are the ones that we're going to focus on in level 4 for this lesson. Okay. And then very quickly for the hacer, to do or to make, and then when it's hacerse plus a noun, you're using that to become. So if you were to say, for example, after I finish college, I will become a teacher. You could use hacer in the reflexive to say something like that. And then similarly with like poner and volver, and then over here with ponerse and volverse, where it says plus adjective, you can use that verb or these verbs reflexively plus an adjective following it to say that you are becoming an emotion or a feeling or an adjective, or turning like a feeling or an adjective. So for example, I could say, I become very nervous in science class. Me pongo muy nerviosa en la clase de ciencias. Or an example with like to turn, for folks who are like, what does that mean to turn? If I were to say like, oh, I got home from school and I realized that the dishes weren't done. And in that moment, I turned very frustrated and upset. So you could use it reflexively in those contexts as well. And then lastly, for category D, this is pretty cut and dry. It just is explaining to us that oftentimes verbs that are expressing feelings and thoughts and emotions or changes in state will likely be reflexive as well. And this is a couple of them. These are a couple of them. There are more that exist, but these are the ones that we'll focus on for today, okay? Or for our, today and the few lessons that follow and throughout level 4. All right, so that's my mini recap of our note page. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out.